Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Josh Cohen. I'm the Director of MBA Entrepreneurship Programs and Startup Recruiting here at Fuqua. This is a unique role between Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Fuqua Career Management Center. And my focus is on helping MBA students take advantage of the myriad of opportunities available to them to enhance their entrepreneurial mindset while they're here and integrate that into their career, whether that's starting their own business, innovating within a larger company, or somewhere in between. I'm a 2007 Fuqua grad, and I've spent my career working in startups, and I love the energy of that you get in a startup environment. And I love sharing that with other folks. And so I love also supporting the students who have an interest in that. So I've got a couple of great second-year students here who will talk to you a little bit about their experiences engaging with Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So let's meet them here right now. First up, Javi Casado-Casero is a second year, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hi, so I'm a second year, currently working on the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Certificate here as part of our Duke Daytime MBA, and I've really had a great time just getting involved with all of the different programs. I am a student from New York originally, did my university in Baltimore, and then I spent the last 4 years here in North Carolina doing some pharmaceutical sales, getting involved with sort of my early entrepreneurship, and then decided to make the transition into MBA once I realized that.
Awesome. And then we also have Jenna Houchins here as well, also a second year.
Hi everyone, it's great to meet you. As Josh mentioned, my name is Jenna Houchins. I'm a dual degree student here at Duke, so pursuing my MBA at Fuqua and then also Master of Public Policy at Stanford. So was born and raised outside Chicago, went to school at the University of Illinois, and prior to coming to Duke, I served in the Peace Corps in Peru.
Wow, cool. All right, so if you have some questions for our students, now's the time to go ahead and put those in the chat. Before we do that, I'm going to just give you a little bit more context on Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship, or Duke I&E. Duke I&E is the university-wide support ecosystem for Duke entrepreneurs, and it's physically housed here at Fuqua. So that means that you can easily access the resources that are available to you here in order to be successful. Our mission at Duke I&E is to inspire and empower the entire Duke community to act entrepreneurially in all endeavors. So we do that through entrepreneurship education that teaches the Duke community to innovate, anchored in curiosity and problem solving, empathy, managing uncertainty through disciplined action, resilience, and certainly ethics. And our bold vision at Duke I&E is that we want every Duke student to have an experience with us while they're on campus. And we believe that this exposure to an entrepreneurial mindset will set you up for everything that you might want to do after you leave here. And Fuqua certainly agrees with us. There's an entrepreneurial mindset and action course, which is the first course that you'll actually take here. We complement this curricular coursework with co-curricular support, like mentors in residence. We have a monthly pop-up to support students starting their own companies. And we have our flagship Melissa and Doug Entrepreneur Accelerator that is a year-long intensive program designed for current Duke students who are committed to launching and growing their ventures. And Javi's actually a participant in that. MBA students who want to work in a startup or found their own can also apply for summer support so they can pursue those dreams. Entrepreneurs who graduate with loans are eligible to apply for loan support after they graduate. And then one of the other things that I work on, which I really enjoy, is Fuqua Fast Pitch. It's a school-wide pitch competition open to the whole school, and it's judged by local entrepreneurs and investors with cash prizes. And it's supported by the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club, a student-run club for students interested in startups, entrepreneurship, and venture capital. And Jenna's been a key participant in Fuqua Fast Pitch and the Entrepreneurship Club as well. Underscoring all of this is community, something that we reinforce early on in your time at Fuqua in a day-long event we call Innovator Spark. That's where we introduce the entrepreneurial mindset, have some fun along the way, and then also meet the people that you're going to do great things with both in your time here at Duke and beyond. So there are no shortage of opportunities to get involved here at Duke, and so I want to turn to some of the questions that I have for our guests while you're continuing to put your own questions in the chat. So I'm going to start off with this one for y'all, which is, tell me how you've engaged with Duke I&E while you've been a student. So Jenna, why don't you start?
Yeah, so my first term here, I had the opportunity to take an elective, social innovation, and it sounded like a cool class, didn't know much about it, and it's a bit for full circle now because I'm actually a TA for the class. And so after that, I recognized I really enjoyed it, so started going to more lunch and learns and just built from there. So with Duke INE, I, again, attend a lot of events they have, both individually with them in the CMC, and also am part of the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club. So a great way to kind of bring that all together.
Yeah, and Jen was one of the student leaders for Fuqua Fast Pitch, which I mentioned earlier, which is a tremendous pitch competition. What about you, Javi?
Yeah, so I got involved pretty early on, as sort of you mentioned, at the Duke INE Spark event. That was where, as soon as I got a first email about this opportunity, I started saying entrepreneurship is definitely on my radar, if not what I would most prefer to do besides some of the more traditional tracks. I got to campus, got to meet Jamie Jones, got to meet some of our other students in that program, and it was really a great time. And from that point forward, I felt like there was going to be a lot of support, and there really was. During my first year, I continued to engage with the INE program with some of the student founders programs, where we had weekly calls, and it was really in the one-on-ones with the mentors that we had, where I was able to get deep into some of this problem solving and what it's like to be an entrepreneur and all the ups and downs, etc. And by working with him, as well as getting involved with some of the faculty, I did research with Dr. Harvey, who's a finance professor here at Fuqua. And I always encourage students who want to get involved to interact with our faculty, because they're here, they're experts, and they want to help us out. So between all of that research, eventually I got involved with the Duke delivery class as well, with Jamie Jones, which was a fantastic experience, led to a myriad of opportunities, as well as Josh mentioned the summer founding program, which I was able to be a part of, got some funding for the summer, continued to work on the idea, and now part of the Melissa and Doug program as well. So it really is just a myriad of being able to take advantage of all the opportunities here at Duke, and I highly recommend just putting in and you'll get out what you put in type of experience.
Yeah, I really love what you kind of really highlighted there, because there's a ton of opportunities available to you, and so it really just kind of finding the right one that's a good fit for you and what you're interested in. And Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club also has a ton of programming that supports students as well with various interests as well.
Yeah, and something else I was going to mention was the Duke INE certificate. Mm-hmm. So it's very feasible to get during your time here, and it's a few elective courses which are valuable. And then also one thing I really enjoy is the narrative design seminar. So it kind of builds off this idea of, okay, great, you have this great startup idea, you want to build it out, but how do you tell your story? And I think that was huge with INE as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't tell the story about it, you may not get anywhere. So that's really great. All right, so thank you for sending some questions in. Let's go ahead and take one of these here. Can Duke INE help you in brainstorming ideas to create a venture? For example, I want to become a social entrepreneur, but I'm not sure what field I want to open one in. So thanks for asking that question. Javi, I saw you nodding there. You got some ideas? Why don't you share?
Yeah, there's a lot of support early on for really all stages of ideas, even fledgling or just having the entrepreneurial notion of wanting to solve a problem in a creative way. You're able to get involved as the New Venture Discovery course as well, which is an opportunity for students as soon as they get to campus to explore these ideas. And while it may sometimes be difficult to fit it in your first schedule, particularly for the daytime MBA program, there are surrounding events and surrounding opportunities, particularly the mentors in residence, where you're able to really speak with them about anything. And entrepreneurialism isn't just about having your own idea as well, but getting involved with the ecosystem as a whole. You can work for another startup, you can help to develop a current one, even get involved with venture capitalism, mergers, acquisitions, private equity. It is all this entrepreneurial spirit that we have here on campus that no matter what stage you're in and what you're interested in, there's something for you.
And I was going to say, I think if you do build this business and get that idea, again, I'm kind of helping with this. Fuqua Fast Pitch is a great place to continue that on, because we do have companies that are a bit later stage. Maybe they're pursuing capital outside of Fuqua, but there also are participants that are very early stage, have an idea, and are just building that out.
Yeah, one thing I also want to maybe bring up too is, Duke is in Durham, and Durham is part of the larger Research Triangle region in North Carolina, which is certainly a startup ecosystem. And so, I just did an event a couple weeks ago, I guess it was in September, where we brought a bunch of students from Duke and also from UNC and NC State and Wake Forest and NC Central, and all together in American Underground, which is a co-working space in downtown Durham, to all network and meet some founders as well. So there's a rich vein of opportunities to get that feedback on your ideas. Again, the opportunities are there. You kind of have to take that entrepreneurial action to walk through those doors in order to be successful. So fantastic. All right, here's a great question. How does Duke I&E help connect students from different programs? For example, what if a Fuqua MBA student would like to connect with someone potentially more technical from another graduate or even undergraduate program? Oh, fantastic question. I've got a thought on that. I don't know if you. So let me share. Javi has mentioned these different courses. We have these new ventures courses: discovery, develop, so forth. And those opportunities are all interdisciplinary, and I think that's what's really nice about Duke I&E serving the whole university. It's not just a Fuqua program. We engage with students from across the university, PhD students, other master's students, undergraduates, so forth. And so we see folks all the time that say, hey, what can I do? Maybe I've got an idea, maybe I've got some subject matter expertise, but I'm not a coder. I don't know what to do. It's like, okay, well, there probably are some folks in this university ecosystem that are. And so one of the events that we did a couple weeks ago was called I&E Matchmaker. And the whole point of I&E Matchmaker was we took 10 students that had an idea, and it was maybe a kernel of an idea, maybe not as far along as where Javi is on his idea, and they pitched it to students. And they said, hey, I've got this idea, here's what I'm thinking about. Is there anybody that is interested in helping out, and here's what we need. And so from that, different students could match up and help support each other. So there definitely are some opportunities to connect with students from different programs. Any other thoughts for either of you?
I guess just another example of that. So this term I have the opportunity to work as an intern with the Council for Entrepreneurial Development, which is a new partnership with Duke I&E. And they chose 4 different interns for the summer, so 2 are the fall, 2 are undergrad students, and then the other graduate student is actually a PhD in chemistry. So I think to your point about really mixing up, there are great opportunities for that.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that. All right. This question is for Jenna. All right. But open to all answers. How would you describe your experience blending your passion for people operations, social impact, and innovation?
Wow.
Yeah. I like it.
$1 million question. Oh, gosh. I'm going to think on that one. I think for me, blending them all together is really just, maybe sounds cheesy, but one step at a time. If I have a class that sounds interesting, taking that. If there's an event that sounds interesting, go for that. And I think a lot of times we think of set goals, which to some extent I think are great, but I try to live more on this mentality of like having a North Star. So if you kind of just keep going in that direction, I think that you end up where you're meant to be, and not always a linear path, but looking forward to what the future brings.
Yeah, I love that. So I mentioned before that I work in the Career Management Center, and so one of the things I share with students all the time is that we want our career to have to be a roadmap. But it's better to do what Jenna's talking about, which is to be directionally right. So Seth Godin, the marketer, likes to say your career should be a compass, not a roadmap. And so I think that's a similar idea. It's like, go directionally in the area you want to go, and there's no kind of perfect job, right? Let's get closer to that ideal. So I love that. I love that perspective. All right, here's a question. In terms of location, Durham, are there any advantages or disadvantages for students who want to pursue tech, entrepreneurship, startups? Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't know if you've engaged with the larger kind of Durham community, and if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, not too long ago, which I highly recommend, and you'll notice once you get on campus, people saying like, get out of the Fuqua bubble, get out of the Duke bubble, especially now with things like Eventbrite and American Underground, if you mentioned GrepBeat as well. They have a lot of events downtown, which is about growing this North Carolina entrepreneurial spirit, which is, it really is growing, and it was surprising. I went not too long ago to a Hispanic entrepreneurship event headed by the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and they had a lot of opportunities, met a lot of other Latino founders as well, which was an experience. And then right after that, later in the afternoon, we went over to American Underground as they were having a Black Founders Accelerator program as well, and saw some of our members from I&E as well there, and really just getting involved into this community. The community is out there, and it's about just putting yourself there and always be searching, always be willing. I kind of got these emails a bit out of the blue, but by just going out and really, again, being entrepreneurial, explorative, you get out there and the triangle is growing, and again, it's about what you can put in.
Yeah, and Jenna's internship with the Council for Entrepreneurial Development is another example of that. There's a whole ecosystem around CED of folks that are participating in that. CED just got a transformative gift from a local entrepreneur who had a tremendous exit, and so there's a lot of that going on. So tremendous upside. I would actually argue that probably the harder thing is kind of determining on what to spend your time on, because I think there's a lot of different options out there. So just something to keep in mind on that. Okay, here's another one. What fields do Fuqua students typically start their own ventures in? That's a good question, and there's so many different ones that I'm thinking of. Just thinking of the last couple of years, we have someone who started a group that's helping veterinarians run their practices more efficiently. We have someone that is doing a software product to help folks that have food allergies dine out easier. We have someone who's doing a cortisol wearable. So there's a wide range. I think what's more important is that folks understand what their own unique strengths are and what exposure they have to some of the problems that they want to solve. So Javi, maybe you could use that as an example to kind of share how you kind of picked the vein for your startup.
Yeah, so before coming to the MBA, as I mentioned, I did some sales, and I had a massive territory throughout North Carolina, sometimes having to drive 3 hours to see some of my clients. And in that regard, and even as I was doing before that some research in the malaria industry, I always had an entrepreneurial edge for trying to make processes more efficient. So I wanted to perform some of these pharmaceutical sales in a remote fashion. COVID kind of came along, and it turns out that our CRM provider had a similar sort of like remote solution already, and that's when I wanted to get involved into business school and start creating something for myself. And originally I wanted to create a video game, and kind of as Josh mentioned, it's highly recommendable and almost easier to just get involved with what you're passionate about, what you know about. I think there's a triangle about balancing passion, what people will pay for you, etc. And it's once you're able to discover what you want to do, which is not easy, you're able to find out what's preventing you from doing so. So I wanted to create a video game where people could sell and trade these digital assets, however it required them to be authenticated. So it got me deeply involved with these professors in decentralized technologies and just going down that rabbit hole of becoming an expert in this one particular area. For me, it was video games and tech, and I had a bit of a background of that, but again, I'm a science degree. My undergraduate was in biology. So just by pursuing what you truly know and feel like and can get passionate for and really die hard about is a great way to sort of decide where to start with.
Love that. All right, so a couple questions here that maybe are a little bit different. One, could panelists talk about their decision-making process between pursuing entrepreneurship rather than more traditional career paths? So, there is a lot of folks in all MBA programs that kind of go the well-worn path of say consulting or banking or tech. You're just second years. You haven't written your book yet. You've got time, but I'm curious how you've navigated thinking about whatever path you choose, taking that approach as opposed to maybe the more traditional route that many students choose.
Awesome.
Yeah, I could start quickly. Not too long ago, I was speaking with a first-year student who approached me and said, hey, I'm not going to do traditional recruiting. I'm going to go all into entrepreneurship. And I said, that's great. Let's quickly talk about it to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And long story short, he had already come from a background in one of the more traditional industries, looking for a change, kind of already had that experience. And I said, you know what, it sounds like you're able to and ready to sort of take this leap and do what no one else is doing, essentially, because it is going to be a lot of events that you'll see other people going to that you don't go to yourselves, a lot of things that are popping up on the calendar, and you might feel to a sense of that there's less direction. I mean, there is no direction almost in a sense of how you're going to start this venture, and that's when you really engage with the community as much as you can, but the entire time you're going to just And it's a part of how really determined and focused you are to try to get something off the ground. But you have to put on the blinders to an extent, understand that other people have other paths and you have other priorities. And if things line up so that you can take a priority in such an uncertain yet exciting space, then you can get yourself to a point where you can go all in without getting too distracted.
And I think for me, the decision process really stemmed from, when the alarm goes off in the morning, what gets me out of bed. And I remember, Josh, we actually had a conversation in a career session, and I started to explore a more traditional path. And you said, okay, make a pros and cons list, the benefits. And I realized I couldn't list many pros of that other path I was considering. And I think for me, to Javi's point, it was a straight path. I knew what I needed to do to get there. And then, but at the end of the day, I just realized that wasn't what I was passionate about. And you do have to embrace that there is more uncertainty, and you will build your own path on the way. But I think when you have that motivation behind you, it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I alluded to earlier that I work in the Career Management Center as well, and part of that role is sitting down one-on-one with students, and I also do some group sessions as well. But sitting down one-on-one with students to help them on their career journey, whether that includes entrepreneurial, starting your own company, or whether that's going to work in a startup or a venture capital firm or something like that. Which, as Javi alluded to, the paths aren't always as clear, but here I want to make a clear distinction. That doesn't mean you're alone. And so, you do have support here, and my role is specifically aligned with MBA students, daytime MBA students, who want to go work in the startup environment, whether that's starting your own thing, working in a startup like I did, or working in venture capital. So you're not alone, but also you are taking a path that's a little bit different there. So I appreciate both of you mentioning that. All right, I think we probably have time for one or two more questions. There's a question here about what kind of support does I&E offer international students, especially those looking to launch ventures from their home countries post-MBA, or even with startup recruiting with OPT? So specifically from that standpoint, obviously one of the benefits of entrepreneurship is that it is open to everyone. You're only limited by your own creativity and grit. That said, there are some U.S. laws that we have to pay attention to. We've got a great international programs office that can help provide some support for students as well on that front. We've got a great team member with the Career Management Center, Doug Mays, who also helps support students as well. So there is a lot of support there, but a lot of the work that we're doing is kind of consistent throughout for all students. So there is some specific support though for international students, specifically as it relates to the career process and sponsorship and that kind of thing. All right, I think we have time for one more thought. Let's see. Okay, this is a good one. How could you get deeply involved with I&E and still take advantage of the MBA as well, and like all of the MBA opportunities? And that is a fascinating one. Let me just give my own 2 cents before I turn it over to them to give the last word. Part of being in an MBA program is you got to make tough choices, and there's never enough time. So that would be my only thought. There's never going to be enough time to do all the homework and go to all classes and all the things you want to do. So whatever thoughts do you have on that?
I think the great thing about Duke I&E is there's so much overlap in different programs, whether it's healthcare, engineering, coding, things like that. So while you are involved in a Duke I&E program, you're going to be interacting with other students as well. And in terms of where you dedicate your time, in terms of, student organizations, recruiting, things like that, I think to Josh's point, you just need to prioritize and accept the fact that you can't do everything. Say that.
Yeah, there's almost a direct slider in terms of how much you're putting into entrepreneurship or everything else, et cetera. And it's almost impossible to really try to squeeze too much more into the 24-hour day and time period that we have. So you're going to have to choose. There's, like she was mentioning, some overlap, especially between some venture capital and potentially product management that has some entrepreneurial aspects. But in terms of the typical events, et cetera, and the dedication that some of the more traditional paths require, I would say, again, you got to make your decisions with the slider.
Yeah, once we figure out how to get more hours in a day, then we have a different problem to solve. We've done some good stuff. We need to wrap. Thank you all so much for all of your questions. They were wonderful. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Duke I&E or get in touch with any of us, you can get in contact with us on our website, entrepreneurship.duke.edu. Good luck on your application. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.